So, good morning and welcome to our DWI Marktinfo seminar on the UK market. But still people are coming in, but I think since 10 o'clock we will start now. My name is Michael Schemmel. I'm the marketing manager for the UK market at the German Wine Institute. And I would like to welcome our speakers today. We invited 3 market experts to tell us something about the UK today. We'll start our seminar with Lily Hellstedt, who's the head of the research company Wine Intelligence, based in London, but with offices all around the world. And she will give us some insights into the wine consumption trends in the UK. And as our second speaker, we have Nike Forrest, who's the head of our Wines of Germany office now for many, many years, based in London. And she will talk about the position of German wines on the UK market and introduce some of our activities. I guess a lot of you have met her already. Last but not least, we've got Elliot Avon joining us. He's the co-owner of the award-winning importer and distributor ABS Wine Agencies, and he will give us some insights on the structure of the UK market and give some advices, especially for producers who are new to the market. So before we start, I'd like to give you some general information. We're aiming at approximately an hour for the seminar, and we will send all 3 presentations to all the participants, so we get all the information. We also record the seminar, so you can also have the opportunity to watch it a second time on our website. If you have any questions, please use the chat box, and we will try to answer them either in the chat or after each presentation, but we will also have some time at the end for Q&As. So please feel free to ask any question you have. Now I'd like to hand over to Lily to give us some new trends, figures on consumption trends in the UK.
Perfect. I'm not sure if you're hearing me now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, perfect. Sorry about that. Slight technical hitch there, just switching screens. So good morning. It's our absolute pleasure to be with you today and to support the DWI and Nikki and her team based here in the UK. What we're sharing with you this morning are some of the latest trends that we're seeing from a global consumption pattern, but contextualizing that in terms of what we're seeing specifically in the UK market. As you may be aware, Wine Intelligence is now part of the IWSR group. So I'm delighted to be able to share with you today both insights on consumers from a wine intelligence perspective, but also looking more broadly at market volume and value trends and other trends that we're seeing from a market dynamic perspective. So I can bring now those kind of combined data sources to help us understand really what's happening in the markets. So let's dive in, because I know we've got lots to get through in the time frame that we have today. So the first trend is that we're seeing a reducing wine drinker population, yet those consumers who are remaining with wine are doubling down on their connection with wine. So that's a very big sentence with lots of words in it. And what do we really mean here? We know from all the evidence that we have that the number or incidence rate of wine drinkers, regular wine drinkers, is reducing in mature and established markets. So that's the downside for us in wine. The upside is that those consumers who are remaining with wine actually are engaging further with our category than they had been doing previously. So if we have a look here, for example, we can see the instance rate. I was talking about that, and I've highlighted here for us the UK. And what we're seeing here is if we roll back the clock to 2015, we had 30 million regular wine drinkers in the UK. Now, at the end of 2020, we have 26 million regular wine drinkers. So that's reduced. So we did have an instance rate in the UK of 59% of adults of legal drinking age were regular wine drinkers, and that's now reduced to 50%. And you can see across, this is not an exclusive pattern in the UK. This is a pattern we're seeing in multiple established and mature wine markets. You'll see one exception there, which I know we're focusing on the UK today, but South Korea is an emerging market where it's not surprising to see that instance rate amongst adults increasing. So overall, our populations of regular wine drinkers are reducing. However, as I said previously, those that are remaining with us are actually more engaged with our category than they had been previously. So really what it means is that longer tail of less frequent, less engaged consumers are not coming into wine, but those with us are more engaged with our category. Oh, excuse me, just jumped through too many slides there. There we go. So if we now have a look at frequency of wine drinking, so we can go all the way back to here to March 2019, rolling the clock forward to the right-hand side of the slide to July 21. And what we're looking at here is the average mean frequency of wine consumption in all of these markets. Now, this is a combination of on and off-premise consumption. And we all know that for the majority of this time frame, in many of these markets, we had either government imposed restrictions in the on-premise or consumers choosing not to be in the on-premise for COVID reasons during this time frame. However, what you will notice is in the UK and actually in the majority of markets, actually consumers still carried on drinking wine at the same or even increased frequency, even though their access to the on-premise was much more restricted during this period. So that's what I was referring to earlier when I was talking about the kind of the consumers that are with us are kind of doubling down and keeping their connection with wine. If we look at the next slide here, what we're seeing, and I do apologize the way my slides are changing, I'll try and make the transitions a bit smoother, but let's have a look at the data anyway. What we also know is that consumers have moved to consuming wine more frequently at non-food occasions. So here we're looking at, if you imagine that horizontal line across the middle is pre-pandemic behavior, and we're asking consumers, are you doing more or less frequency of wine consumption at these specific at-home occasions? And what we're seeing here is that you'll see lots of up arrows on the left-hand side for consumers drinking more for a relaxing drink at home at the end of the day, compared with their increase or decrease in frequency with an informal meal. So again, what we're really seeing is that although it's the proportion of occasions for non-food is smaller, actually it's growing ahead at of food occasions at home. So what does this mean for us in wine? This means that consumers have, during the COVID 2 years, have really adopted wine more frequently for those non-food occasions at home. And when we talk to consumers, we hear statements from around the world from consumers in the UK as well about, well, you know, I didn't want to open a bottle of wine previously at home because I might not have been there the next day or the day after, but now I'm more home-based than I used to be. Wine feels like more of an appropriate beverage choice for those occasions. So the next trend, we have in the UK, sort of drilling down a little bit further into the demographics, we have a continued maturing wine drinking population in the UK. Now, typically, the demographics, particularly the age of wine drinkers, kind of follows the demographics of wine drinkers in a population overall, because wine, particularly in mature and established markets like the UK, is relatively universal. You know, we have over 50% incidence rates, as I was pointing out earlier. So you would expect when there's a demographic overall change happening in the population that that will be reflected in wine drinkers. And that's certainly the case in the UK. Overall, we have a maturing, aging population, and that's reflected in what we see from a wine drinker perspective. So if we have a look here at this is the proportion, therefore, of younger drinkers. So in the UK, 18-year-olds of legal drinking age to 34. And if we go down the chart here to look at the UK, previously, so back in 2015, we had just over 50% of those people then aged between 18 and 34 who were regular wine drinkers. That instance rate has halved. So it's now just over a quarter, 26% of people at the end of 2020 who were aged in the UK between 18 and 34 were regular wine drinkers. So to the point I was making earlier, this kind of longer tail of less frequent, less engaged is actually also being driven by fewer younger people coming into our category. However, having said that, when younger drinkers do adopt wine, again, they tend to be more involved, more engaged, and actually higher spending than they had done previously. So if we have a look at what does that mean for what does our population of wine drinkers look like in the UK, now over half, 50%, 56% of regular wine drinkers in the UK are now aged over 55. So I think this is really interesting from an implication perspective in terms of who should we be engaging with? How should we be communicating with consumers, knowing that over half of our drinkers sit in the boomer and senior age groups, and at the high end of Gen X as well. One trend that we're all very familiar with, that we've all, I'm no doubt, been doing personally, not just in beverage alcohol, in wine, but in general, is switching to online purchasing and e-commerce. The evidence we have suggests that, yes, there was a necessity or a need to do that during 2020 and 2021. However, consumers have actually adopted a new behavior set and have become used to purchasing wine and other beverage alcohol online more frequently. And that's a behavior that is here to stay. So if we look here, we can see what we're looking at again is if you imagine that line across the middle is pre-pandemic purchase behavior. And we're asking again, consumers, are you doing more or less of buying wine online than you were doing pre-pandemic? And you'll see again, in the majority of markets, consumers are saying, yes, I am definitely buying more online, and we can see that through the sales data. However, there's a really interesting emerging trend coming through from last year. So the darker, heavier line for each country is the proportion of consumers who are buying wine more often via a delivery app. So that would be Uber Eats, Deliveroo, or local equivalents of delivery apps. And you'll see that that's actually growing in most markets, including the UK, ahead of general online purchasing. So what does this mean? The way we talk about this with our clients is actually saying to think about delivery apps as actually being a marketing and communication channel for brands, for regions, and for countries, rather than just a sales channel. Because what we do know is that the connection consumers have and the memory they have is really difficult to establish in wine. We all know that, how hard it is to remember all the SKUs, remember all of the options. And what happens when you're ordering via a delivery app is often the number of choices that you're given is very much reduced. So having that kind of memory trigger actually really helps build brand equity. So this is actually a really important channel, even if kind of economically, financially, the volume value of sales is quite small. Actually, this is a really good way of building that memory and that affinity and that brand connection. Sustainability, lots of conversation I know in our sector and in many others about sustainability. Although consumers from a wine point of view are connecting to a certain extent with sustainability with wine, we kind of have almost a kind of positive negative again happening in wine. Consumers typically already think wine is sustainable. So they're starting from a point where they don't perceive or see that there's an issue with wine when it comes to sustainability. And again, when we talk to consumers globally, we hear the same story, regardless pretty much of where we're talking to consumers. And that's again the same for the UK, which is consumers kind of think that wine is natural. It comes from grapes, it grows in beautiful vineyards, somehow somebody picks it, crushes it, squeezes it, turns a tap on a barrel, and out comes wine. And it's typically delivered in glass bottles, which consumers believe is a sustainable packaging option because it's recyclable. And that's certainly the case here in the UK. So when consumers are thinking about their kind of behaviors and how to behave in a more sustainable or green way, actually wine in their mindset, it doesn't have a problem in terms of not being sustainable yet. So if we look here, we do what we call an experimental design. So we have a kind of made up brand called Farrington's Estate. And we show it to consumers through our Vinatrack platform, our online surveys. And we ask about perceptions of quality, how likely would you be to buy this product, etc. And then we also show versions of this bottle that, for example, have a medal on, so award-winning, or say established in 1870, or say natural wine, or say organic, etc., etc. And you can see here, if you imagine the kind of line across the middle at 0 is the control, so the bottle that doesn't have any of these additional claims. And then you can see there the net intent to purchase. So basically, does it mean by putting one of those claims on this bottle that the net intent to purchase increases or decreases? And you can see actually that still wine is still a pretty conservative category from a consumer point of view. Award-winning and established in 1870 still have the highest kind of net increase in terms of intent to purchase. I will make a couple of comments on this slide because I'm sure some of you are looking at those categories thinking, natural wine. So when we ask consumers about natural wine, the majority of consumers think that wine is natural. So they're not thinking about what we would talk about from a production point of view, orange wine, low intervention, that style of wine. They're actually thinking, for the majority of consumers, think that wine is already natural. So it becomes really interesting here in terms of how we communicate and build on what is already positive sustainability credentials in our category. When it comes to vegan and vegetarian, again, remember that this is being tested when it's on those claims are on the front of the label. So for those consumers for whom vegan and vegetarian is important, it's very important. But actually what we hear from consumers is if the claim is it's kind of too large, or it seems to be the reason for being, or the USP for that particular wine, actually it can put non-vegetarian and vegan consumers off. We are seeing a move in the UK to a broader repertoire of tried and trusted brands. And so I'm sure some of, excuse me, some of the other speakers will talk about this. Obviously in the UK, under the lockdowns that we've had here over the last 2 years, consumers have really moved more to both shopping online, but shopping in kind of local, on foot and neighborhood. And as a result of that, often those smaller format supermarket stores here in the UK, which is one of our key channels from a volume driver perspective, have narrower ranges of brands compared to the larger format stores. So what's happened is consumers have been reminded of the leading brands in the UK market more frequently than a broader range. So it's changed the dynamics of how consumers are behaving. So if we look here, what we were seeing going into the pandemic was a trend in most markets, including the UK, of increased wine brand awareness. And then you'll see what happens on the dark line, the third one, in 2021 is a reduction. So in most markets, the kind of memory or awareness that consumers had of wine brands decreased in 2021. And if you think about it, it's that reduction in touch points with wine brands. And consumers need constantly reminding and reassuring to remember wine brands. But you'll see that trend was actually different in the UK. And that's because, as I said, in the UK, consumers moved to either online or smaller format stores. So their memory of the key brands was enhanced, and their memory of the longer tail of brands was reduced. Low and no and moderation, key trend that I know we and all of us in the wine sector are definitely thinking about. And we see all the evidence that we have is that the demand for low and no alcoholic beverages, including wine, is set to continue. So if we look here at some of our data from the IWSR side of our business, we're looking here at 3 years. So this is H1, so the first 6 months, so we can do like-for-like comparisons of in 2019, in 2020, and in the grey bar in 2021. And this is global volume of low and no for beer, wine, and no alcohol spirits. Now, the bases are different, so we have to, not directly comparable, but what we're looking at here is patterns. And we'll see that actually, even through the pandemic, low and no beer volumes have grown globally, low and no wine volumes have grown globally, and no alcohol spirits volumes have grown globally. What is interesting is there is a difference between low and no beer and low and no wine. The primary driver of growth for beer is in the no alcohol beer category, whereas the primary forecast driver for growth for wine is in the low alcohol wine category rather than the no alcohol wine category. And what we're increasingly seeing through all of our consumer data is the substitutors and blenders. So substitutors are consumers who substitute for a low or no alcohol option at an occasion where they would have previously consumed alcohol. And blenders are consumers who choose, for example, like a full strength gin and tonic or glass of wine, and then their second beverage of the evening or the day might be a low or no, and then back to alcohol. So they're blending low and no alcohol and full strength alcohol within the same occasion. So we're seeing many more consumers substituting and blending, and actually that the low and no is being driven by substitutors and blenders rather than people abstaining totally from alcohol. This trend is also very much being driven by younger legal drinking age consumers, so Gen Z and millennials. And they are absolutely in all markets, including the UK, the cohort who are driving this blending and substituting trend. And then finally, we're seeing a rising sophistication of what we call the home premise, so at-home consumption, which is supporting premiumization. So again, if the evidence we have here to help us see this, here we're looking at the changes. So we've got the dark line is the 2019 to 2020. This is total volume of wine in these different price bands. So you've got total wine on the left, and then you've got going through from the lower price points up to the super premium on the right. The red bar you see here is the change from 2020 to 2021. And the orange dot actually is the really important bit. So that is what's happened in the 2 years over COVID. So have we returned to where we were in 2019 from a global volume perspective for wine? And actually what we'll see for total wine, the answer is no. We had that big downturn in 2019, some recovery in 2020 into 2021, but we're not back to pre-pandemic levels. And you can see that for the wine in the value and below and the standard category, but the one category where actually we're ahead globally of 2019 by 2021 is in that premium sector. And part of this is consumers switching from on-premise and actually therefore trading up from a cost point of view and treat perspective in terms of the wines that they're buying to consume and enjoy at home. So there we go. There's just a really quick run through some of the key trends that we're seeing, and particularly in relation to the UK market.
Okay, thank you very much. That was quite comprehensive and a lot of data to digest and a lot of interesting topics, challenges and opportunities. There have been a few questions. Some of them Tina already been able to answer. Let me just go through. There's one on the consumption of vegan consumers. Do you have data that shows how vegan consumers do purchase versus all other consumers?
Yeah, so the vegan and vegetarian is actually a really an interesting one. Even amongst consumers who are vegan or vegetarian in their diets, we still hear from consumers that they are not aware that wine is not always vegan or vegetarian. So there's still a gap between that kind of understanding for more committed vegan or the kind of ultra committed vegan and vegetarian consumers. There's more of an awareness. I think what's really interesting is actually we're seeing this driven more through the on-premise than retail. So if you look at many wine lists around the world now in restaurants, actually they're specifying vegan and vegetarian. So actually the messaging is coming through primarily from the on-premise rather than from retail. So consumers are learning that wine is not necessarily vegan or vegetarian friendly, but really getting that messaging more from the on-premise than from retail currently. Okay.
I think that that's probably a good trend because you have somebody explaining in the restaurant why a wine is not vegan or why it is vegan. Versus if you just see that in a retail store and you wonder why can a wine not be vegan. The next question was, how does the market between low and no alcohol split up?
Yeah, so no alcohol is 0.5 or less. and then low alcohol. And I'm going to look to Tina, might jump in on this one.
Yeah, I have the definitions here. So low alcohol is everything under 7.5%.
Yeah. Yeah. So low would be between 0.5 and 7.5, up to 7.5. Thank you, Tina.
The next question was, can you tell us what GBP level premium starts? So what price level?
So in the UK, and again, we can confirm this back to you because it does vary a little by market, because obviously we're trying to reflect the price brackets within each market. But in the UK, that would be from around £8.
And then the next question is, why does the labeling of biodynamic prevent people from buying the wine, while organic, sustainable, environmental friendly are beneficial?
Well, again, a really good question. The evidence we see and hear from consumers typically is that it's a difficult one. Many consumers don't understand what biodynamic means, and particularly here in the UK, it's a less known category generally for food and drink generally. Organic is here in the UK is a very established category from a food perspective, because we have a longer history of food products being labeled as organic and sold as organic. Interestingly, in the UK, if you were to look at that chart again, kind of specifically for the UK rather than globally, actually fair trade features quite positively in the UK. And again, it's because we in the UK have a kind of longer history and other categories offering fair trade. So I think part of it is that kind of understanding of the category in general. And then therefore you kind of consumers take that understanding into the wine category. So organic is known, understood and trusted as even if consumers don't quite understand what it means from a technical point of view, they have a conception of this must mean it's a good thing from a production point of view. The other really interesting one we hear about organic is that actually consumers often associate organic wine with being better for them as well as better for the environment. So they think that somehow there are kind of less chemicals or interference in the product, so therefore it's more pure for them to be consuming. And interestingly, again, they often tell us that it relates to they believe that organic wine will give them less of a hangover.
Okay.
So it's this real kind of myriad of broader perceptions that consumers bring, whether they're correct or not, technically.
And then the producer asked the question about low and no alcohol. He meant the market share. So do you know the market share of low versus no alcohol wines?
We do. I'd have to come back to you on that one, unless Tina's got it to hand.
I saw the question. I did some calculations very quickly. So we have about in 2020 and 2021, that's IWSR data now, volume sold. We have about 75% no alcohol and 25% low alcohol.
But of the total market, so the share, how many from the total market?
That's another calculation that I need to do.
But you can, if you find it during the presentation, then you can just
put it in
the chat. Otherwise, we'll get
I'll do that.
Okay, I think that there are no additional questions. Thank you, Lily, for your presentation. That was very interesting to see what consumers are after, and there are some trends I think that are relevant for all established markets, also in Germany. We can see them. So thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
And if there are any more questions, then we'll follow up with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so then I will hand over to Nikki first, who will tell us a little bit about the positioning of German wines in the market and our activities.
Great, thank you very much, Luli. I always feel enlightened after I hear your presentations, and even though I've heard that one before, I still find it interesting. So thank you very much for that. Welcome everybody. Thanks for coming to the UK special. I can't see all of you, but I've got a list of names, so I know who's in the audience, and great to have some familiar faces there and also some new ones. So if we just look at the agenda for this presentation, I think this will probably be the shortest presentation of the day. We're going to do a very, very quick facts about the market. And then we're going to do a dive into the sectors. We'll look at the off-trade and the on-trade. And then my colleague Caroline, who is here today, who's the account director on the team, is going to take us through the opportunities that the UK 2022 campaign will give us. So if we just go into some quick facts, the UK is the world's 5th largest wine market. The UK is now Germany's 4th largest export market, counting for about 7% of German wine exports worldwide. Good news recently is that German wine exports to the UK have grown by 62% in value throughout 2021. And I think, Michael, you'll correct me, but I think those are for the figures to the end of 2021. So that's very, very good news. In 2021, we sold £62 million worth of German wine in the UK. And again, echoing what Luli was saying, and we'll look at price bands in a bit more detail shortly, the premium end of the market has seen significant growth, and the fastest growing price band is actually £9 plus. But as I say, we'll go and have a look in a bit more depth in a moment at those price bands. So looking at the market as a whole, and again, Luli was talking about sort of pre-pandemic levels, 2019 versus 2021. And in 2019, wine and spirits, so this is those two categories together, the market was worth 12.1 billion. And in 2021, it was worth 14.5. And a lot of these categories, as you'll see, have had double-digit growth, particularly champagne, 26%. That's on the previous year. And then you've got sparkling wine doing well, wine growing at 3% in terms of volume. The growth is now, I don't have the last 12 weeks data to share with you, but I have seen it and I can confirm that the growth is now slowing. We haven't got back to pre-pandemic levels yet, but we are heading that way. And it'll be very interesting to see the Q1 figures from the first 3 months of 2022. If you want to head on to the next slide, Caroline, this is where we look at price points. And if you look at the green section, which is the value part, which I think is probably the most useful bit of this, there's a really interesting picture of premiumization emerging. Last year, everything in £5 was in gross, and this year it's £6. And of course, some of that is always driven by rising costs and tax, etc. But some of that is driven by, as you were saying, people staying in, spending a bit more on wine because they're not going out. And that is what's driving these increases. So again, it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out. But if you look at the £8 to £9 it is up 13%, £9 to £10 is up 24%, and £10 plus is up 33%. Now that's from a smaller base, obviously, than if you're looking at £5 to £6 or £6 to £7, but it's very significant. And as I say, I think it will be very, very interesting to track what's happening throughout 2022 and whether there will have been a shift in that as the on-trade is now very much back on in the UK. And in fact, if you want to go to a restaurant that's half decent and you haven't booked it at least a week in advance, you will not get a table at the moment. So the on-trade is back in force. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out with the off-trade figures. If we have a look at the market overview by country, if we start at the bottom of the chart, we've got Germany, we're down 1% in volume and 2% in value. And the average price, again, has gone down as well. So we're seeing a decline in Germany. We aren't completely alone. The USA has seen a decline as well. Argentina is enjoying substantial growth, and that's driven by Malbec. And it's, you know, it's a very interesting country. They're sort of hanging their hat on Malbec in the way that we can be sometimes said to be hanging our hat on Riesling, but that's going very, very well for them. Wines from France, Australia, Italy, South Africa and Chile all saw single-digit volume gains in the last 12 months. And French wine has actually enjoyed significant growth during this period and overtaken wines from the USA. If we look now at the sector overview, I think it's very interesting just to look. I mean, I'm sure you know that the UK wine sector is driven by the supermarkets. That very much remains the case. But of course, during pandemic times, people weren't shopping so much in the supermarkets. So if you look on that first line, you've got to December 19, you've got 60.7% of sales from supermarkets. And then you've got a dramatic drop down in December 20 to 55%. Now, where did those wine sales go? If you look at online, you've got that at 6% in 2019 and almost, well, not quite, but almost doubling to 10.3% in December. So that's where those sales have gone. They've gone to online. And again, it would be interesting to track to see what happens to online sales, but there's been another rise in 2021. And I would expect, although I can't sort of look into my crystal ball, don't hold me to it, but that will have increased again in 2022. It'll be interesting to know what, see what Luli thinks of that, but that would be my prediction. Then if we just hop over to the next slide. Just interesting for those who are in the market or looking to join the market to see that, you know, who are the biggest players, you know, and it's Tesco by a long way, you know, double the size of Sainsbury's, for example, or not quite double, but nearly double. Dodgy maths going on there. So you've got, but there haven't really been any significant changes. You know, Tesco's up a little bit, Asda's up a little bit in the last year. Sainsbury's is down, but hardly. So there aren't really any significant changes. And if you track from December 2017, Aldi and Lidl, who are our discounters, Aldi have gone up by a whole percentage point, 1.1%, you know, rise there from 6.5 to 7.6, and Lidl tracking around the same rate of increase. So that's interesting, but you know, you might have expected that to be a more significant rise, but there haven't been any really dramatic changes, I would say, in the way that
I think we might have lost Nikki there, so I can jump in quickly. But yes, no dramatic changes in terms of the UK retailer landscape over the last 3 or 4 years. What we also have looked at is the view from independent merchants. So we've done a survey with kind of leading publication for independent merchants in the UK. And over the past several years, we've been collecting data and asking independent wine merchants about German wine for them and how it works for their customers. And what's been really great to see is that over the past 3 years, there's been a kind of warming sentiment towards German wine. So people are increasingly agreeing that their customers are looking for German wine specifically and interested to buy them. So that's a really nice view from the independent wine merchants, who we know are a particularly important sector for German wines in the UK. And now to flip to the on-trade, obviously all of our stats before have been from the off-trade. The situation, again, we've seen bigger drops for still wine in particular. Obviously everything was closed, so this makes complete sense for 2021, 2020. Down across the board, you know, 35% for still wine, 33% for sparkling, 10% for champagne. Again, it's staying slightly more buoyant, but that was as to be expected. And in terms of country, what's really interesting here is obviously, again, in terms of volume, percentage drops across the board for all countries, and in terms of overall value as well. But what we can see for Germany here, which is really exciting, is that we've got a 16% increase, which is great. And that's kind of really feeding into that premiumization that we were speaking about before that Luli pulled out for the off-trade. It's kind of showing that people are excited to buy more premium German wines. And really, I think when you've got a sommelier there who's able to hand sell and able to guide that purchase, that's really a region which Germany can pick up on. And then just a quick look at grape varieties here. So varietal consumption in the UK. Again, this is something that we track over several years, and it's really encouraging to see that Riesling is continuing to grow and to rise up the ranks. So that's up from 15% in 2020, and I think we're in 6th position there, which it's held for quite a long time. So it's nice that that recognition is increasing. And Pinot Noir's down on 2020, but still in 5th place. So still a really strong picture there for Germany, producing varietals that the UK is familiar with. And just to kind of explain this graph a little bit overall, this was a survey done, and these are all people who have drunk these particular varietals in the last 6 months. So it's something that people are familiar with and that they are actually purchasing and consuming. And then just to our activity here in the UK. So this is just a brief, a real overview on one page of everything that's happening. As you can see, we've got a lot of campaigns which are running throughout the year. We're running a busy press office. We've got promotions and partnerships with retailers happening throughout the year. And we're focusing in on wine education for the trade as well, and for consumers. And we've got 31 days of German Riesling, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, which is our way of shouting about how fantastic German Riesling is to everybody in the month of July. But just to dip into a few more of those in more detail, obviously 31 days I've just mentioned. If you are in the UK market already, definitely get in touch with your importers, ask them what they're doing, ask how you can get involved. And we'd love to have more people on board. Big G trade sessions, again, we'll be talking to the trade directly about German wines and really upskilling people to be able to sell more. So we'll be helping those sommeliers push that premiumization even more in restaurants. And a way for people to directly get involved with us. Social media, we are posting constantly. We've got a very busy social media calendar across all the different channels. So if you've got something to shout about, if you'd like to get involved, again, get in touch with us or get in touch via your importers, and we'd be happy to help. So really, I think that's us. Thank you very much for listening. If you've got any questions, feel free to email us directly on the address which is below. And if there are any questions right now, we can take some more.
Thank you, Caroline. Sorry for the slight technical problem.
We've got another storm coming in. So
thanks, Caroline, for jumping in. So I haven't seen any questions yet. So we will continue to our last speaker, Elliot Avin from ABS Wine Agencies, who will, after all the theoretical part and lots of figures, talk a little bit more about the practical side. And I'm really looking forward to your presentation, and I would like to hand over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Carol. So when coming to import to the UK, I know some of you may already import to the UK. So how can you refine who you're working with to generate success? Or if you are not yet represented in the UK, some considerations as to what you might think about before approaching an importer to get wines into distribution. A lot of the data that exists obviously focuses on the supermarkets, the multiples, because they easy access, lots of point of sale. But when it comes to the independents, we often only get a little bit of qualitative data, such as the notion of, is German wine more attractive or less attractive to your consumers, which it's nice to see that it's increasing. So to give a bit of background about myself, I, with my father, run our and bereits wine agencies. We represent about 85 family-run wineries from all over the world, concentrating specifically, or not specifically, but concentrating on Germany. We represent Guntram, Gunderloch, Lawson and their Wolf estate down in the Pfalz, Stodden, Fürst, Schneitmann, Dürnhof, and Jona. So we really have a smattering of producers from all over the country. We are their exclusive agent in the UK. We sell from everyone to the supermarkets, all the way down to independent wine merchants and everything in between. Now, we don't sell to consumers direct, and we don't sell to the on-trade direct. We sell to regional wholesalers who will supply the on-trade. So I'll just give a little bit of an overview of the market. So the very first thing I talk to any winery from anywhere in the world is, why do you want to sell in the UK? It's a very established wine market. It's possibly the most competitive wine market in the UK. Obviously, traditionally, we didn't produce wine, so we've had to import it from all over the world, meaning we are incredibly spoilt for choice, meaning that everyone uses the success in the UK as a litmus test. Is it, if my wine succeeds there, can it succeed anywhere else in the UK? So the most important thing when moving into the market especially is, to you, what would define success? And I think being very mindful as to what defines success for you is incredibly important. We used to represent a German agency, and perhaps a lack of communication led to a breakdown of the different metrics that each of us were using for success. We thought volume and earning euros was one success, but actually status listings, selling to the on-trade with their Grosses Gewächs wines was actually more important to them than doubling or tripling their business in the supermarkets. So making sure you're on the same page and what the definition of success is incredibly important. So is it that cash turnover you're looking for? Is it the volume you're looking for? Do you want to be in status listings such as Michelin-star restaurants, or in fact, established retailers like Berry Brothers and Rudd, or other lighthouse retail listings such as that? Are you looking to build a reputation? Of course, lots of the wine press worldwide is based in the UK. Lots of the competitions are based in the UK. So are you looking to just have a footprint in the UK to access those competitions such that you can build a reputation around the world? Or are you looking to diversify your supply base so that you, a number of stockists, varying number of sectors, so you've got lots of eggs in lots of baskets, so that if something like COVID hits, you've got, if you lose a sector or lose a customer, you've still got plenty of others. So very mindful of what your definition of success is before talking to your agent, or in fact, if you're already represented in the UK, communicating with your agent, making sure that you are both on the same page and you're both working to the same goals. Now, with those goals are your capabilities, and also what you view as your capabilities, as well as what others view as your capabilities, are aligned. So can you do large volumes? Have you got a reputation for your quality, and of group quality and style together? Because here we're thinking of different sectors will require both different styles and a varying range of qualities as well. So are you very competitive on price? Have you got a fantastic reputation or story? So each one of these capabilities stands you in much better stead for attracting different sectors of the market, and understanding which your best capabilities are, which your best foot forward is, such that when you're discussing with an importer, put those things forward. And it's important to also know that the perception of an importer on your capabilities may be different from those that you expect yourself. So they may be different, and actually they may see something that you see as run of the mill, such as your story, can often be, because you live it every day, it might not be as attractive to you and you might not think it's incredibly valuable to the market, but actually can often be one of the best things to stand you in good stead, depending on the sector. So once you've decided why you want to sell in the UK, what your capabilities are, what you want to define as success, which sector of the market would you like to approach? And as Nikki and Wines of Germany have already separated, these are very different from the on and the off trade. But I'll start on the on trade. And again, in the on trade, it varies incredibly differently. So I'll split these into 4 different groups. The multiple groups, such as Hilton, let's say the big hotel groups, or Wetherspoons, big chain of pubs. What's required in sectors like this are price. Is quality so important? Perhaps not, but are your volume capabilities there? And therefore going through the right importer with access to these is important. Now, it's also important to realize that when you get a listing with these, you might be selling a big volume, but at the end of the day, if something like COVID hits and the on-trade is shut down, that one customer might have 2,000-3,000 branches, but actually, of course, you've only got one listing. Regional chains, so these are different regions around different chains around the country. So something breweries like St Austell in the southwest that would look after their own chain of pubs, but also have a wholesaler that would supply local restaurants. So they're a nice way to approach a certain region and diversify supply around the country. Small, medium restaurant, who has access to these, depending on whereabouts in the country or what kind of importer you want to work with, will depend on whether they have access to this. In terms of national supply, there are 3 or 4 national agents which would supply, I'm just going to say qualitatively off at the top of my head, so 90% of countries worldwide. So the Matthew Clark, Bibendum, Inotria, Liberty, these very large full service agents, full service distributors will have access to hundreds of small restaurants. But at the end of the day, you are will be in a list of 5,000-6,000 SKUs, perhaps not getting the focus that if reputation and owning the relationship of the final consumer is important to you, you may get a little bit lost. Now, independent restaurants, there are lots of small wholesalers who work, which will also pick off the top of the list of someone who might be supplied by a full service agent. There might be 5, 6, 7% of their list that these small agents can go in and put in some cherries on the top of their list. So very different capabilities and requirements, and very different agents looking after each of these. The on-trade, each equally as diverse. You have the big, large supermarkets, and just looking at the average price of wine in the UK, and I'm sure I'll be corrected here by Wine Intelligence, but just over £6. And we think after VAT and the margin of a supermarket, that ends up at about £3.80 a bottle. So more than half of that is duty and VAT, meaning that the price in which that has to leave the cellar is incredibly low. So when we're looking at premium wines in supermarkets, often premium wines end up, as they said, over £8 or £9. We're already looking at wines under €3 leaving ex works, and I'll run a little bit through the value chain there. But and then multiple specialists, very few left in the UK. We're talking about people like Majestic and Oddbins. Wine racks still exist in some form, but again, they will be a nice crossover between doing some volume, but also starting to work up that price ladder, being that they have that person selling that at point of sale being able to discuss the wines with consumers, whereas the supermarkets perhaps wouldn't, unless they were someone like Waitrose, a premium supermarket. Online, we get big companies like the Wine Society, incredibly good value for money, but often are seen as a discounter because they make smaller margins. They therefore, if a wine is being sold in the Wine Society, perhaps it's not as attractive to people down that scale in small independents or brokers. Small independents, incredibly opinionated, one of the most fiercely opinionated sectors of the wine trade, I would say, worldwide. Very autonomous, want to create their own selection, will buy from a huge number of suppliers, will buy some wines direct from wineries, will buy some from agents in the UK. Getting the trust of an independent wine shop owner and getting them behind your wines is a fantastic way to own that relationship and sell quality wines through a big chain of a big network of independent retailers. So I would say there's 400-500 very high quality small independent retailers like this, and gaining access to them is a lot of work. But once the wines are in there, they're often and they are trusted. It's a fantastically stable set of listings. Brokers, fine wine merchants. So here this is talking about the very top end of the market, grosses gewächs, high-end sweet wines, as well as high-end dry wines that are sold on allocation, etc., for the very high-end style. And so accessing which one of these would be different agents and different representation, different routes to market would be considered for each one of these sectors. So how do we access these, and which of your capabilities and your goals would you choose for that correct route to market? As Luli said, the direct-to-consumer model is increasing. I've seen lots of wineries and brands over the last few years creating their own website, holding stock in the UK, selling direct to the consumer. If you've got a strong story, strong social media presence, there is that consideration of owning that full value chain. The capabilities of technology these days is it's very easy to manage. You can put stock in a fulfillment house, you can sell online, direct to consumer. Definitely worth considering if you already have a worldwide reputation and you're struggling to find an importer. This is always a possibility. Lots of work in terms of driving footfall online, but definitely an alternative option for the boom of online retail. Or you could sell direct to the last point of sale. Now, this is in terms of how many points of contact you're willing to make within the UK and your appetite for the UK and how much work you might want to put in. If you wanted to sell direct to each shop, that's certainly a possibility. So in terms of direct shipping, it has become a little bit more tricky with both logistics and freight companies charging through the nose through shortage of HGV drivers, as well as Brexit putting in increased levels of paperwork. But if an independent wine merchant wants to buy direct from you, it can decrease the value in the proposition chain. However, it's a lot more work for a winery. You need someone to nurture each one of these relationships. And therefore, but it allows you to own that relationship and be able to control the information flow yourself going through to the person selling the wine to the consumer. Another operation to look at, but incredibly heavy on logistics and number of point of contact for the retailers. Or perhaps you want to look at different regional or different sector agents. So this allows you to have fewer points of contact. So you could have someone look after Scotland for you, maybe the southwest, the east of England and London. Again, you've got a little bit more control of the visibility of where your wines are ending up. Again, you can own that relationship a little bit more, and you get with a specific regional agent and a specific sector agent, they'll get more focused market intelligence than perhaps a wider, broader single agent like ourselves. A sole agent like ourselves. So we access, as I said, like us, we represent wineries selling direct to supermarkets, so at the entry level of the market, but also we sell to brokers. So I always use Lawson, Dr. Lawson as an example here. They're Lawson Brothers side of their business, lots of volume, creating wines that are perfectly priced for the supermarkets. So with Lawson dealing with us, they can have a single point of contact within the UK. We can deal with Waitrose with their Lawson Brothers wines, but we also sell with their broker to brokers such as Berry Brothers for their Grocers Gewächs wines that are sold on allocation. And often supermarkets might want a single point of contact for 30 or 40 wineries rather than dealing with one winery direct. So although you might have to sacrifice small margin for an agent like ourselves, it allows a supermarket to or the agent to benefit from a more holistic marketing proposition for a number of different wineries rather than dealing with hundreds of wineries themselves. Here you can access independent wine merchants or and everything in between. And one thing to ask is whether your sole agent is holding stock as well in the UK, because some agents might act as brokers and just sell direct ex-seller. But it's in order to access the independent wine merchants, certainly need to hold stock in the UK. Now, I've done a little bit of a value proposition as well in terms of, just share a different screen. Margins that are expected along the chain. And this, I'm really sorry, this is quite small, but I'll share this afterwards. So here we can see a price per bottle that would leave a winery FCA. And here I've taken two different examples, a more entry level wine at €3 a bottle, and perhaps something a little bit mid-price point at €10 a bottle. The wine that enters at €3 a bottle, I've expected it to be shipped in terms of half a container with a weight of about £1 a six-pack, and then just a pallet or a half pallet with the €10 bottle, which is around £4.30 a case. Again, these can change dramatically depending on volume, but it's a nice ballpark figure. Holding stock in the UK, I've put in a little bit of warehousing example. The duty per case, so 6-pack and a 12-pack, gives you a bit of an example here. How much it costs to deliver within the UK for 7 dozen, 14 dozen, and 28 dozen and a pallet. And therefore, when selling from an agent in the UK to an independent retailer who might just buy 7 dozen mixed, a wholesaler, distributor might expect 20% to fund the marketing. And you'll see that a €3 bottle of wine can end up retailing at £13, retailers taking 35%, agent taking 20%. Same €10 bottle of wine, which is more likely the route to market for a €10 bottle of wine, coming in at around £27 at an independent retailer. If that wholesaler was to sell direct to a supermarket, so smaller agents selling to a restaurant, if smaller agents sold to a restaurant, because they are doing smaller volume, they might take 40%, seeing that a €3 bottle of wine might end up on a small restaurant list at £28, which is quite a big jump, of course. And that €10 bottle of wine at 78. I won't go into every single different route to market that I've put on here, but if you think of that selling direct to a supermarket, that €3 bottle of wine would pop in over £10, give or take, probably end up just under £10. But it end up that's with an agent making 15% and the supermarket making 35%. So something to think about in terms of your proposition. And I'll share this with everyone so you can have a little play, put in some numbers and have a look at something a little bit more accurate. But let me see if we've got a couple of questions here. Which one is direct to consumer today successfully? So I would say that it's across the board. There are not necessarily in Germany. I don't know German wines that are successful doing direct to consumer in the UK, but lots of South African wineries are doing it because of the nature of wine tourism in South Africa, and then the winery owning the relationship with the consumer. That's something that they have certainly pioneered within the UK. Any other questions? Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks, Elliot. That was very interesting, a lot of information. And I think especially the producers who are thinking about entering the market now have a much better idea of what to consider, what to bear in mind if they would like to work in the UK. If there are any questions, please ask them now. Otherwise, you can certainly reach out to all of us, to Nikki or Caroline or the team in London, or to me at the DWI here in Germany. And we can also certainly pass on any questions to our speakers. So if there aren't any, I can't see any additional questions here. So I'd like to thank all our speakers for your expertise and for sharing your knowledge with us. That's very much appreciated. So thanks a lot. And thanks to all the producers for joining us. Yes, another question. Yeah, we'll certainly share the presentations so you can have a look at it afterwards. And as I said, we also recorded the session, so you can also have a look at it later on. So thanks a lot. Have a nice day. And yeah, hopefully we'll see each other soon at any of the upcoming live events. Thank you and take care.